You're listening to Soap Dirt, the latest in television entertainment news.
Hey there, CBS soap opera fans. This is SoapDirt.com, and we need to talk about Phyllis Summers. Specifically, we have a way that Phyllis can get back to her family and get away with everything that she's done. We figured it out. Of course, we don't know if Y&R writers have figured it out or if they're going to go someplace a little less logical. But based on the recent events, including Phyllis murdering Jeremy Stark, there is a lot to unpack, and there are several ways this could go. But we have figured out a path that could take Phyllis right back to where she wants to be, getting revenge, Stark out of her hair, and everything working out and her kids not being mad at her. How can that possibly happen? We'll tell you. Click that subscribe button below so you get all the latest Y&R and soap opera spoilers updates from Soap Dirt on YouTube. Now let's dig into this. Right away, Phyllis got 3 issues. Number 1, Jeremy Stark was a problem. Number 2, she has this persistent itch for revenge against Diane Jenkins that she still can't give up. And number 3, she knows her kids are going to hate her. Problem number 1, Jeremy Stark, is over as of the Monday U.S. Young and the Restless episode. This already aired in Friday in Canada, and we're going to see it on a Monday episode. Depending on when you're listening to this, it might vary in your personal timeline. But the bottom line is, as we predicted at Soap Dirt, Jeremy Stark has had it with Phyllis. She wants to go back to town and confess because she doesn't want to hurt her kids. And he threatens to kill her, which is what we predicted would happen, that he might actually consider killing her, because the bottom line is, if Phyllis goes back and confesses, maybe she'll do a little time behind bars for tampering with evidence, burning an ambulance, whatnot, bribing public officials, but she's not going to do hard time. Let's face it, Michael will get her off of any serious charges. The greater problem is that Jeremy Stark is a felon and he's on parole, and if he gets tangled up in her criminal charges, he could go away for a very long time. He is not willing to risk it, and he made that clear. And then on Monday's episode, when she starts lying about, I'll leave town with you, we can go away, he figures out she's lying, and he grabs up a pair of scissors and he's going to stab her. But Phyllis gets the best of him and stabs him. So it's a little stabby, bloody action, and she gets blood splatter on her, but she manages to wrap him up in a shower curtain, and she is dragging him out. So here's question 1. This could have gone a whole different way. Once you see this, you'll have the same question. At the point that she stabbed him, clearly in self-defense, why didn't Phyllis just call 911 and say, oh my gosh, this crazy man kidnapped me and I had to kill him to get away? And then she could have made up something from there. She could have blamed the entire setup on Stark and said that he had snatched her away, but she didn't do that. Instead, she wraps him up in a shower curtain and she drags him out. Although it's funny to think about skinny Michelle Stafford dragging a big guy like James Hyde anywhere, but she does it. So that's her big, overwhelming problem 1 taken care of. Stark's out of the way, and she is obviously gone off to dump his body. Now, for her revenge thing against Diane, the best outcome for Phyllis is if Diane rots in jail, away from Jack, away from everybody, but Phyllis isn't in a bad light and she doesn't have her kids mad at her. So we have come up with a path that could work for her, where she could go forward and have a plausible explanation for all of the events to where she looks like a victim and not the perpetrator, and Diane still stays in prison. Let's dig into this. I'll tell you what we think she could do. Not clear if Y&R writers are going this path. Generally, their writing is pretty sloppy, but we've run this through several people in the Soap Dirt writer's room to ask, do you think this is plausible? They agree. Here it is. So Phyllis could come back to town acting all traumatized and explain that Diane was the one working with Stark and they had kidnapped her and then burned the ambulance and everything so that everybody thought that Phyllis was dead. And the poison and everything that was found having been purchased by Diane, she could explain that away because Diane bought it as part of the plot. And she can even try to claim that Diane and Jeremy have been running a long con on everyone and that they were after money and all this kind of stuff. And then as for the fact of Phyllis marrying Jeremy, she can say that he was conning her and lying to her and took advantage of her vulnerable state, which is what everybody thinks he did anyway. So she could simply reaffirm those sentiments and basically say that he lied to her and gaslit her and tricked her into marriage and that he was after her money all along. And then she can say that what happened was that the police figured it out and they have the right person, they have Diane, and then the other missing piece of the equation is Jeremy. And what she can say is that Jeremy was supposed to torture her to get Diane's revenge, and then he was going to kill her and take her money. And what helps this case is that Jeremy has already wired some of Phyllis's money to an account in the islands. So if she hides his body well, she can sell it that she escaped from Stark and that he took off out of the country. Of course, she's not worried because she knows he's never going to come back because she is going to go hide his body. And while it's a little sloppy, of course, this doesn't quite tie up all the loose ends. None of Y&R's plots ever tie up all the loose ends. And already people think that she might have been conspiring with Stark, and people are very willing to believe that Stark is responsible for this. So Phyllis could come back, play the victim, and say that Stark kidnapped her on Diane's orders and she barely escaped with her life, and that as far as she knows, he took the money and ran. That way, she never has to come clean to her kids about faking her death and breaking their hearts, because that's going to be a problem. Even though she told Jeremy in the conversation before their life or death scenario that she could get forgiveness. She said Diane played dead for 20 years and was forgiven. She says, I've only been dead for a couple of days, so they will forgive me. But they might not, especially because Kyle is going to explode because this whole scenario is screwing up his marriage. Her road to forgiveness, if the truth comes out, is going to be a very slim one. So I tend to think, because Phyllis is pretty clever, that she might come back and try to throw all of this on Stark, because the bottom line is he can't say anything. He's dead. And if Diane faces accusations that she was plotting with Jeremy, then, all she's going to do is say, oh, no, I didn't do it. Well, of course, that's what she would say, whether she did it or not. And the bottom line is she could even say that Jeremy was supposed to kill her, that Diane hired him to kill her, but that he decided to kidnap her instead. So that way she can set up Diane as first-degree murder, murder for hire, whatever, and that Jeremy pulled an end run because he was going to take Phyllis away with him. They can explain all that. But the bottom line is there is this little path that Phyllis could follow and get away with everything. Be sure to click the subscribe button below so you don't miss any soap opera updates from Soap Dirt on YouTube. And keep watching, because on Monday, you're going to see Phyllis get the better of Jeremy after he makes one threat too many and comes at her with scissors. She's going to do a little stabby action and then wrap his corpse up in a shower curtain. Let's hope the villain is dead and he's not going to pull one of those, horror movie Halloween things where you think he's dead and then you come back and the shower curtain's empty and the corpse is gone. So that could be a fun twist too. Stay tuned for tons more on your favorite CBS soap opera.
Thank you for being a loyal listener. Follow us wherever you get your podcast, because you don't want to miss the next episode. Soap Dirt is on all the major podcast platforms, including Apple Podcast, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and more.